Hello, teachers and colleagues and friends. This is the May 2022 edition of Ask Me Anything from my YouTube channel. If we haven't met before, my name is Jana Williamson, and I'm a pianist and piano teacher in the suburbs of Chicago. I have 3 questions today submitted by viewers. The first one is not piano specific, but the second and third are. So this first one is a big question. What parts of studio management logistics have had the biggest impact on your studio running smoothly? Now, this is a big question. I have lots of thoughts on this. I'm going to go through 4 things that have made the biggest impact on my studio. If you would like to talk about any of these more in depth, I'd love for you to consider a teacher consultation. These are the kinds of things that I talk with my clients about on a regular basis, and I'd be happy to work with you on how any of these could be appropriate for your individual context, your studio. So, number 1, having a really good, well-written studio policy. If you don't have a studio policy, I would encourage you to go write one right now. It's simply a document that can allow you to be very clear in what you offer and what you expect from your clients. And we all know that many times friction and conflict can come when we and someone else do not share the same expectations. So if you're not clear in what you expect from your students, and if they're not clear on what they should expect from you, then you can easily run into a whole host of problems. In my opinion, a policy needs to have, number 1, how much lessons cost, number 2, how you're going to be paid, and number 3, something about when lessons will happen, either a calendar or when you're able to offer lessons. Those are the bare bones, and then I think you can include several other things beyond that if you would like to. Okay, second thing that has helped my studio a lot is having boundaries around my schedule. For me, at this point in my life, this is a no-brainer because I have 4 kids, I have a husband who has an intense job, and I do other things with my life, such as performing and working with other people in musical contexts, as well as enjoying having time to myself as well. So for me, this has not been ever a huge problem, but I know from forums and other places that a lot of people really, really struggle with this. So I would strongly suggest that you decide which hours of the week you are able to teach, and then you just stick to that. And if someone asks you to teach outside of that, the phrase that I like to use is, "I'm sorry, I am unable to accommodate that request," or "I cannot offer lessons on Fridays due to my personal schedule," whatever it is. Okay, number 3 helpful tool in studio management is having a clear and reliable onboarding procedure. So by onboarding procedure, I mean the things that I do when someone contacts me about taking lessons. So if someone texts me and says, "Hey, my neighbor Susie gave me your name as a really great piano teacher. Can I start my son on lessons with you?" I have a whole procedure of what happens when I get that text or that email or that phone call. And I know a lot of teachers kind of don't have something like that. And then every time it comes up, they have to think about, what do I do at this point? So your onboarding procedure can be entirely different from mine, but you have to have a clear idea of what do you do when someone sends you that email or that text or picks up the phone and calls you. And lastly, in this question, the thing that has revolutionized my studio is flat rate tuition payments. And by that, I mean that I calculate how many lessons I'm going to give during the school year, what the school year is, how many months that is, and then I divide all of the payments into equal payments per month, so that I'm not calculating how many lessons I give in a month and then giving them an amount based on that. People have a lot of opinions on this, and you can certainly disagree, but I think it is the best way to run a professional studio, in my opinion. And similarly to that, my students have to pay with automated payments, and that takes that to even the next level of simplicity for your studio, so you don't have to think about the money part of it. Okay, our second question today is piano specific, and it is, how do you achieve even trills? And this question came up in regards to my video about the Chopin C# minor nocturne, opus posthumous, which sounds like this. So there's that trill right at the beginning, and there's other trills in that. First of all, I would just like to say if you are an adult amateur or someone else who's not currently taking lessons and you're asking about trills, I would strongly suggest that you get a good teacher who can help you with technique. Trills are a big topic, and they're one that freaks students out. And so the first step is to just have a nice relaxed mechanism. And by mechanism, I just mean your hand, your forearm, just your whole technique that you can play with freedom. Now, that doesn't mean that we are completely relaxed all of the time, because of course you have to engage muscles to even sit upright, but it does mean that you're not holding excessive tension. So for a trill motion, the easiest way to remove excessive tension is to simply rotate. So if I rotate on C and D, the easiest way to do that is to have my opposable thumb going against a finger on this side of my hand. So the easiest trill fingering is 3 and 1, in my opinion. So if I'm just doing C and D, I can just be on those keys and have forearm rotation create the actual sound. I'm going to link a video, not on my channel, but Kate Boyd has a fantastic video about what rotation actually is. And I would strongly recommend that you go there because she explains it better than I ever will be able to. Now, in contexts like the C sharp minor nocturne, you may not be able to use that fingering, particularly if you're on sharps. 3-2 still allows for rotation and that freedom of movement. And so that's what I would recommend on that G sharp, F sharp trill. And I would just say, as much as you can use your whole arm, whole hand movement, think that your fingers are just an extension of your arm, that it's not finger individual movement. Like that's much, much harder. And so if you find yourself feeling any pain or tension in your forearm, that's because you're trying to do a lot of this. That can lead to tendonitis. You just want to get that really even and relaxed thing going. Okay, 2 more quick comments about this. First of all, you can always start a trill slowly, especially in a romantic piece like that nocturne. You can start a trill slowly and gradually accelerate as you play it, which I think is musical, as well as allows you to start from a place of freedom and then just speed it up, still trying to stay in that place of freedom. And then my last comment about trills is oftentimes students spend all of their mental focus feeling anxious about the trill. And I would like to release anyone from that and remind them that trills are ornaments. They are not the main thing. They are just supposed to decorate. And so as much as you can actually focus your ear and your mental energy on the actual melody, the line that you're playing, and allow the trill to simply be a decoration to that, the better it's going to sound and the more you're going to be able to play freely that trill that's part of that melody. Our last question today is, how do you teach balance? And by that at the piano, we mean balancing the melody over the accompaniment, because pianists are wonderful, superior beings where we do multiple things on our instrument at the same time. And so this is actually the bane of all pianists' existence, is simply being able to voice out the important notes or balance the melody against the accompaniment. I think this has to start at a very early stage of piano study. And the first step to this is actually being able to do 2 different things in 2 different hands. Many method books include some basic technical exercises that have to do with doing 2 different articulations in 2 different hands. In Piano Safari, it's in level 2 technique book. It's the spider web, where you do one hand detached and the other one legato on a 5-finger pattern. And then I pulled out some Piano Adventures books because so many teachers use these books. I thought this might be helpful to see what I'm talking about in here as well. In the orange book, in book 2B, this is the tightrope walk. It's almost the exact same thing as the Piano Safari spiderwebs. Done in whole notes first, and then in half notes, and then in quarter notes. that is the prerequisite to doing any kind of balance work, is that you have to actually be able to do two different things in two different hands. It doesn't have to be articulation, but just to cross that midline in your brain and be able to do two different things. And then I would say we also have to start very early with hearing a melody over an accompaniment. So I grabbed another technique book. This is the 2A technique book as just an example of something that helps us listen to that melody and do something different in the other hand. This is the Spotlight on the right hand on page 22 and Spotlight on the left hand on page 23. These are in a D major 5-finger pattern, and one hand holds a whole note while the other hand bounces lightly on some accompanimental thirds. So what's happening there is the one hand is playing the melody beautifully and legato, and the accompaniment is staccato and very light and soft. But the Favors have done a great job of making this easy to do because you play the whole note first, that sits, and then you do something different with the other hand. So it's a very easy way to start this idea of balancing a melody over an accompaniment. If you are teaching and you have a student who's far beyond this stage and they don't have the capability of balancing, I would probably do some sort of simple exercise like this. You don't have to give them the Faber 2A book. You can make up your own exercise like this, or you can just teach them this by rote and not tell them what book it came from. But something very, very simple where they have to just actually do those two different things in two different hands. Similarly, if they have a more advanced piece, you can simplify whatever they're doing within the context of that piece of repertoire to only focus on balance for maybe a measure or two. And I'll let you think about that based on whatever piece you're working on. And then lastly, even more advanced players, intermediate students for sure, benefit from ghost practice, which I have mentioned in many videos. And ghost practice is just where you do you don't actually allow the accompanimental hand to play out loud. So let's say we have a C major Alberti pattern like this, and something like, okay, I'm just making this up. I would have my Alberti bass play silently, but actually pretend to play on the keys like this, like a ghost. It's there, but you can't hear it. And then play my right hand. Okay, now I'm just gonna barely let my left hand come in, just enough to actually hear it. And I think a couple of the notes didn't sound, that's okay. I can practice it again, make sure I hear every note, but that the right hand is still singing over the left hand. That's the quickest fix for balance problems, especially for intermediate students, is to do that ghost practice where one hand doesn't play or plays silently, and then you just barely let it come back in. Of course, students also have to listen to themselves, and so you can always record them and play it back for them and see, can you hear the melody louder than the accompaniment if they're not able to listen in the moment. And we are constantly training our students in listening to their own sound. But I wouldn't start with listening. I know this sounds really weird, and you can disagree with me if you want. I would start with actually giving them a technical tool so that they can experience something like that ghost practice and then say, oh, right, that's what it sounds like when the melody is speaking out, singing out over the accompaniment. Sometimes our students aren't able to listen because they're not actually able to do something physically. So it's really important that we break it down for them and help them with the technical hurdle that's preventing them from actually hearing and imitating a sound. I hope there have been a few helpful things in this. If you do have further questions about this, please reach out and ask me about a teacher consultation. I'll link to the page on my website. I hope you are having a wonderful spring as we wrap up the school year here in the Northern Hemisphere. If you've got recitals, I hope they're going really well. Best wishes in all your teaching.